It was one of the most comforting shows ever created. Filled with smiles, laughter, and life lessons that stayed with viewers long after the screen faded to black. The Andy Griffith Show didn't just entertain millions. It became part of American culture. Its small-town charm, innocent humor, and wholesome values painted a world that felt warm and safe. But behind the scenes of this classic, things weren't always so simple. There were real emotions, conflicts, and stories that rarely made it past the cameras. And some of those stories were nothing like the peaceful town of Mayberry people fell in love with. The Andy Griffith Show first aired in 1960 and ran for 8 successful seasons, ending in 1968. In that time, it gave the world 249 episodes filled with heartfelt moments, memorable characters, and genuine laughs. But what most fans didn't know was that the cast didn't always get along. In fact, some of them held on to grudges long after the cameras stopped rolling. One of the most surprising tensions came from the two characters who seemed the closest: Andy Griffith and Frances Bavier, who played Aunt B. On screen they looked like family. Off-screen, they could barely speak to each other. From the beginning, Andy Griffith was the heart of the show. He played Sheriff Andy Taylor with a calm, fatherly charm that made the whole show feel safe and grounded. He had great chemistry with his co-stars, especially Don Knotts, who played the unforgettable Barney Fife. But not everyone clicked as easily. Frances Bavier was nothing like the warm, cheerful Aunt B viewers loved. She was a very private person, serious about her work, and didn't mix well with the lighter, more relaxed atmosphere on set. Her high standards often clashed with Griffith's more laid-back approach. They didn't yell or argue loudly, but the silence between them could be just as cold. Ron Howard, who played Opie Taylor, was only 6 years old when the show started. He was just a little boy with big eyes and a shy smile, but even at that age, he could tell that something wasn't quite right between his TV dad and TV aunt. He later spoke about how the cast was professional, but not necessarily close. That says a lot, especially coming from someone who spent most of his childhood growing up around them. Ron Howard's story is one of the most inspiring parts of the show's history. Born in 1954 in Oklahoma, he was surrounded by acting from the very beginning. His parents were both in the industry. His father a writer and actor, and his mother an actress. It's no surprise he ended up in front of the camera at such a young age. By the time he was 5, he had already been in multiple shows and movies. But when he became Opie, everything changed. That role didn't just make him famous. It gave him a place in television history. He wasn't just a child actor reading lines. He absorbed everything happening around him. He watched how scenes were set up, how actors worked through tough emotions, and how directors made quick decisions under pressure. That kind of experience shaped the way he saw storytelling. It stayed with him long after he left Mayberry. After the Andy Griffith Show ended, Ron didn't stop. He later became Richie Cunningham on Happy Days, another hit that cemented his place as a beloved television star. But behind the scenes, he was already thinking about something more: directing. While still acting, he began learning the ropes and made his directing debut with a movie called Grand Theft Auto. It was a low-budget project, but it was a huge step. He co-wrote it with his father, and it showed that he wasn't just relying on his childhood fame. He was building a career on talent and effort. That effort paid off. Ron went on to direct hits like Night Shift, Splash, and eventually some of the most successful films in Hollywood. He became known for his ability to tell heartfelt stories with real emotional power. From Apollo 13 to A Beautiful Mind, his work touched people all over the world. And it all started with a little boy walking hand in hand with his TV dad down a dirt road. But while Ron was finding success, things weren't always easy for the other members of the cast. Frances Bavier had a much harder time letting go of her role as Aunt B. After the show ended, she moved to a quiet town in North Carolina. Locals said she was kind, but distant. She didn't talk much about her time in Hollywood, and she avoided interviews. She seemed to want peace, but she also carried a weight. Memories of old conflicts that hadn't been resolved. The tension between her and Griffith lasted for years. It wasn't loud or messy, but it was heavy. One time, Andy tried to visit her at home, hoping to talk and make amends. But instead of a warm reunion, he was met with coldness. Frances didn't appreciate the surprise. It only made the distance between them feel bigger. But time has a way of changing things. As she grew older, Bavier started to reflect more. Facing health issues and nearing the end of her life, she picked up the phone and called Andy. She apologized. She told him she was sorry for how things had been. That simple act, those few words, meant a lot. Andy later shared that he appreciated the call. It didn't erase the past, but it helped bring peace to both of them. Frances Bavier passed away in 1989 at the age of 86. Andy Griffith also passed away at 86 years later, in his home in North Carolina. They were both laid to rest far from the lights and noise of Hollywood. Ron Howard's story continued on, both in film and in life. One of the most touching parts of his life isn't even about the movies. It's about love. In a world where celebrity marriages often don't last, Ron's love story is rare. He met Cheryl, the love of his life, when they were teenagers. They went on a simple first date, and something clicked. That quiet connection turned into a lifelong bond. They were married young, and while many doubted they'd last, they just kept proving everyone wrong. By 2025, Ron and Cheryl had been married for 50 years. Half a century of partnership, support, and shared dreams. Ron once described their relationship as a river, sometimes smooth and sometimes rough, but always moving forward together. He said the secret was simple. Just keep paddling. That kind of commitment is rare in any field, but especially in Hollywood, where fame and pressure can pull people apart. Ron's steady, grounded personal life became just as inspiring as his work behind the camera. The Andy Griffith Show may have ended decades ago, but it still lives on. It's more than just a television program. It's a feeling of safety, simplicity, and kindness. Fans still gather every year in Mount Airy, North Carolina, to celebrate the show. The town, which inspired the fictional Mayberry, becomes a place where strangers connect over shared memories. People come to remember the laughs, the lessons, and the characters who felt like friends. But the real story of the show isn't just about what happened on screen. It's about the people who made it, their struggles, their triumphs, and their humanity. The tension between Griffith and Bavier reminds us that even the best things can be touched by conflict. But it also reminds us that healing is possible. That a phone call, even after years of silence, can bring peace. It shows that forgiveness matters, even when it comes late. Ron Howard's life shows something just as important. That childhood fame doesn't have to be the end of the story. With hard work, curiosity, and the courage to try something new, it can be the beginning of something even greater. He proved that growth doesn't stop when the cameras stop rolling. He built a life of meaning, filled with stories that changed the world, and a love that stayed strong through every challenge. And Andy Griffith himself left behind more than just a TV show. He left a sense of hope, that even in a complicated world, kindness and wisdom can still shine through. His quiet, thoughtful performances created a character people looked up to. And while his real life was more complex, that doesn't make his legacy any less meaningful. In fact, it makes it richer. So next time you hear the whistling theme of the Andy Griffith Show, think about what was really happening behind that familiar tune. Think about the young boy who grew into one of the greatest directors of our time. Think about the quiet feud that ended in an apology. And think about the simple truths that still matter. Honesty, forgiveness, and love. If you enjoyed this look into the real story behind one of television's most beloved classics, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe for more fascinating stories from entertainment history, and share your favorite Mayberry memory in the comments below. There's always more to talk about when it comes to the shows that shaped us.